Martin Luther King said, and I quote, I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by their character. On that note, I warmly welcome respected Dr. Usha Ramanathan ma'am, human rights scholar, Professor Dr. Mehrajuddin Mir sir, Chair Professor Motilal Nehru, Chair Care Mangalam University, our Dean and Director in charge, Dr. Madhuri Parekh ma'am, esteemed faculty members, participants of the conference, and students of ILNU, to the inaugural ceremony of the second edition of the International Conference on Right to Equality Contemporary Challenges. It is with great pleasure and honor that I stand before you today to mark the commencement of this event. In the rich tapestry of Indian culture, prayer holds a profound significance, serving as a sacred ritual that connects us to our spiritual heritage and fosters a sense of unity and humility. In this spirit, I request you all to kindly stand for prayer.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापः.
I request Madhuri ma'am and Vikas sir to kindly escort the guests to the dais. We are honored to host eminent academicians Dr. Usha Ramanathan ma'am and Professor Dr. Mehrajuddin Mir sir, whose profound knowledge and expertise would greatly benefit one and all present here and contribute to making this conference a resounding success. The tradition of lighting the lamp holds deep symbolic significance in Indian culture, representing the dispelling of darkness by the light of knowledge, wisdom, and enlightenment. As the motto of our university states, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya, meaning from ignorance to knowledge. Hereby, I kindly request the student volunteers of Team ICRE to kindly light the lamp.
We must appreciate this team who has worked very hard for the conference. Let us clap for them. Thank you.
Dr. Usha Ramanathan ma'am is a research fellow at the Center for the Study of Developing Societies and is a professor of environment law, labor law, and consumer law at the Indian Law Institute and is a regular guest professor at many universities around the globe. She has pursued her LLB from the University of Madras and LLM from the University of Nagpur. Ma'am completed her PhD from the University of Delhi. Her writings can be found in the Frontline, The Hindu, The Wire, and the Indian Express, amongst other leading newspapers. I request Madhuri ma'am to present a floral welcome to ma'am. Professor Dr. Mehrajuddin Mir Sir holds the position of Vice Chancellor at the Central University of Kashmir. He pursued his LLB, LLM, and PhD from Aligarh Muslim University. Sir has a teaching experience of more than 35 years. He was conferred a number of fellowships and awards, including Max Planck Fellowship Germany, Indian Network of Researchers UNESCO, Lossaw Consultant Malaysia, and ISC Fellowship India. I request Vikas sir to kindly present a floral welcome to him. I also would like to request the audience to acknowledge the presence of Professor Dr. Nigat Basu ma'am and request Shreya ma'am to kindly present a floral welcome. Throughout history, the pursuit of equality has been a cornerstone. However, despite the strides made, we continue to confront numerous obstacles that impede the realization of this noble ideal. Discrimination, prejudice, socioeconomic disparities, and systemic injustices persist in various forms, posing formidable challenges to the principles of equality and human rights. Yet, in the face of these challenges, we are also witnesses to remarkable resilience, courage, and determination exhibited by individuals and communities advocating for equality and justice. It is through collective action, dialogue, and collaboration that we can overcome these hurdles and create a world where every individual, irrespective of their background, enjoys equal rights and opportunities. Over the course of next 2 days, this conference will serve as a platform for dialogue, exchange of ideas, and collective strategizing towards addressing the contemporary challenges to the right to equality. Through significant discussions, paper presentations, and interactive sessions, we aim to identify innovative approaches, best practices, and actionable solutions that can contribute to advancing the cause of equality in our societies. Now, I would like to invite our Director and Dean in Charge, Professor Dr. Madhuri Parekh ma'am, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Good morning to all who are present here. It's a privilege for me to introduce the guest experts who are sitting on the dais and off the dais. And it's an opportunity for me to welcome all the participants and the students who have shown interest in this conference and for this noble cause on which the discourse on equality is taking place. There are situations where I have seen as a teacher that we hardly prefer to talk about some of the issues. But if we do not talk, I think we cannot resolve many issues. And this is a concept. Equality is a concept on which I think that we must discourse, debate, and we should try to understand what it aims for. So, taking this opportunity, I would like to briefly introduce the guest on the dais and off the dais. Today, we have with us respected Professor Mehrajuddin Mir Sir, Chair Professor Motilal Nehru, Chair KR Mangalam University, and former Vice Chancellor, University of Kashmir, and he is also Chair Professor at Institute of Law, Nirma University. We have with us Dr. Usha Ramnathan, Madam, a profound scholar, researcher, human rights scholar, and extensively she has worked on the data privacy and many other human rights related issues. We have with us Professor Nigat Basu, Madam, who was a coordinator of teacher education, School of Education, Central University of Kashmir. She was a former head and dean, Faculty of Education, University of Kashmir and School of Education, BGSP University, Rajouri, Jammu and Kashmir. She is a profound researcher. Let us welcome all our three guests today, experts today. And along with that, I would also like to warmly welcome the participants, faculty colleagues, and the students, and all other invitees who have shown interest in attending this conference and this dialogue and deliberations on right to equality. I would like to express my sincere thanks to the management of Nirma University for supporting us in giving shape to this concept of organizing a conference on right to equality. And this is the second conference on the same theme that we are organizing. I must convey my thanks to both the area heads, Dr. Anand Kumar Shinde and Dr. Arun Prasad, who have always shown readiness to provide all kind of support in our planning. My three faculty colleagues who have played pivotal role in designing the themes along with the student team, in designing the themes of this conference and executing the vision behind the conference, Dr. Vikas Kumar Upadhyay, Dr. Abbas is going to be doctor very soon. So it's my inner wish that is reflecting here. Mr. Abbas Srivastav, Ms. Shriya Bhojwani. These three faculty coordinator and organizing team, part of the organizing team of the conference. Let me convey my thanks to them for such a nice planning and execution of the planning and the vision behind the conference. The theme of the conference is right to equality. It is both timely and significant at this juncture, I can say. We initiated the vision behind the conference. I would just like to briefly narrate. And this vision is also a kind of, I can say, came out from the deliberations of these three scholars who are behind organizing this conference, Mr. Abbas, Shriya, and Dr. Vikas. We initiated this conference with the object to promote more engagement on the very important concept of right to equality, which is one of the basic interests of the society around us. We aim to create a society where there is equal dignity and liberty for all. This conference aims to initiate new discourse and continue the existing conversations on the furtherance of right to equality, especially in the light of contemporary developments across jurisdictions. The conference moves around the themes of equality of status, opportunity, access, social equality, as well as challenges that come with it. Each of these themes have their own significance in today's societies. And I am excited to see the new approaches towards these themes through the paper submitted by the participants and the discourse that is going to take place. A periodic and critical reconsideration of our values and the structures created and processes enacted to further those values ensures a thorough awareness essential for the fulfillment of our collective goals. The Institute of Law, through this conference, aims to provide a platform for a collective reassessment of challenges faced in the enjoyment and enforcement of the universally recognized and constitutionally protected right of persons to equality. A gathering of scholars, practitioners, students from across India and at the international level on a common cause shall be useful occasion for knowledge sharing and resolution of shared institutional challenges facing the realization of right to equality for all. Let me also take opportunity to share brief about the papers that we have received and the response that we have received for this theme. I am overjoyed to share with you that we have received what is more than 100 plus submissions, that is more than 150 as per my discussion with the organizing team from over 150 authors across the country, including students, academicians, and research scholars. It makes me immensely happy and proud to see such enthusiastic response and participation of the uh, of the various stakeholders on this theme. This is a topic on which I must also convey my thanks to my cell on equal opportunity. They are also working extensively on this theme of right to equality. And during the entire year, they are also organizing different events, including the analysis of the judgments, then thought-provoking sessions through organizing a theme-based discussion and poster making competitions. These are the various events that we are conducting. This is the culmination of all these thought processes throughout the year through conference. And I must convey my thanks to those students. Let me take this opportunity because the topic is such where I must mention them. The students who are going for legal aid work and pro bono work and NSS activities, they're actually executing the vision behind this right to equality. So let us clap for them because that is a real service to the society. Just before few days, the NSS camp took place in a small village, Lapkaman. 7 days they stayed there. And some observation report they have prepared. It's a wonderful report. We sitting here, we in a AC classrooms or in a very like easy life going processes that we have been following, hardly we are ready to believe that people are facing a problem of potable water. They are not getting water. In the remote villages of your surrounding only, if surrounding Ahmedabad, if you visit, some of them they are having a issue of getting water for the daily routine purpose. The water table has gone down to 300 to 400 feet. These are the problems that they are facing. Many of them, they are getting the water, which is with a fluoride and all, and many of them, they are suffering from TB and other cases. These insights I am sharing of the team who has worked in the nearby village, that is NSS. So credit goes to them for making such kind of deep observations during their stay. Let me also take the opportunity of this present issue of the climate change, where we sitting here in the AC classroom, we hardly feel the inequalities that exist in the access to the resources and the access to the similar kind of, you can say, environment. There cannot be umbrella or uniform, you can say, system for everyone, but it's a need-based approach. So there are people who are staying in the outskirts or in the city areas where there is no, you can say, proper you can home setup for them. It's a kind of in a shelter or some created shades that they are staying, and we can see the condition of them in summer. This is also issue related to access to the resources. Remote areas of Gujarat, my team has visited. That also I'm sharing with you the deep insight into it, because many of them, they are struggling for their daily survival. Like morning, they are getting 100 rupees by Manrega or other schemes, and that is their money for the entire days, and for, I can say, during the entire year they hardly gets 90 days employment, and this is the source of their survival. So their requirement may be different, our requirement may be different, but the vision behind the constitution is something that it's their need, our need, all should be taken into consideration. It is not only need, but it is also contribution to the society. If we see this, and if we will be a change maker through any of our efforts, maybe academician, maybe a lawyer, or maybe sitting as a judge, or in a policy making process, whatever you can do, please try to follow that vision behind the this right to equality, and do something, contribute your own part. If we each contribute, I think we can take the nation to the next level. And we, being a part of the community, we have a great strength to do something for our own society. We shall be able to do that. So with that note, I would like to conclude my speech, and I wish that there will be many good things that will be a take home for us. And I think we should take it and we should try to implement it. That is the need of an hour. We discuss and we shift the responsibility to others. Let us take the onus of doing it. We each share our, we each d- do our own part. I think we'll be able to meet the requirement. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I wish you all a happy stay for the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words of inspiration. I now request Professor Dr. Mehrajuddin Mir Sir to kindly share and impart his vast knowledge and expertise in the discipline of law.
My dear students, the learned participants, the guests, and the galaxy on the dais, Professor Madhuri Parekh, Madam, the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Madam, the social activists who has worked in Kashmir also, Professor Dr. Usha Ramanathan, and learned colleague, Dr. Vikas Upadhyay Sahab. Good morning to all of you. Well, I think today you are going to discuss a very important topic, the concept of equality. And perhaps Professor Madhuri Parekh has given you some inputs regarding this very important topic and what is being done by the Law Institute, Nirma University, so far as this very concept of equality is concerned. Well, at the very outset, I am thankful to the madam, to the institute, as well as to all of you for giving me an opportunity to stand before you and to express my views on this issue. You all are aware that so far as India is concerned, India is a very vast country with a very wide diversity in every respect. And India had to work very hard till the dawn of 1947 to get what we call independence. And finally, we got it in 1947. And the people who were involved in that very freedom struggle, they are known to all of you, to what extent they have suffered, to what extent some of them even were murdered while fighting for their own rights. And once we got the independence, those people who survived out of that very struggle, they were great people, they were stalwarts, they were experts, and they were experienced. And we are lucky that they have given us with great Dr. Ambedkar, they have given us what we call the Constitution of India. You as a student of law perhaps are aware, this is one of the best constitutions in India, in the world, which is very exhaustive, and you can get whatever you want in terms of your rights, in terms of your human, fundamental, constitutional, and then the concepts of freedom, then the concepts of equality, so far as this very great Bible of ours is concerned. And you have seen our last 75 years, and we are going to complete 100 years in 2047. These 75 years, there have been many changes so far as our laws are concerned. Many new laws have been enacted. Many acts have been passed. Many ordinances have been passed, wherein every law was oriented towards the equality as well as towards the freedoms. And even the Supreme Court of India has tried its best to meet the expectations and aspirations of the people, and from time to time has made a modest attempt, and in many cases a successful attempt, to expound, to stretch so far as the interpretation of these various laws are concerned. You may talk of Article 14, you may talk of Article 15, you may talk of Article 17, you may talk of Article 19, you may talk of Article 21. You have landmark judgments on these issues, which the Supreme Court of India from time to time have delivered, wherein they have cemented the rights which are guaranteed to us by our Bible, the Constitution. But the issue arises, even as on date, as it has been rightly said, when the बच्ची ने जब यहाँ पर इसके conference के बारे में बताया, the ground reality, even after 75 years of independence, stands as it is. Our weaker sections, our women, our children, those who are educationally backward, they continue to suffer on these issues when we talk of right to equality. You have a good segment of population, as Madam rightly said, who even as on date don't have a drinking water, potable water. You have a good chunk of our population who are deprived of their due health care, who are deprived of what we call quality education, who are deprived even of what we call access to justice. And many, you may take any issue, you will find there is a discrimination on the ground, but as it is rightly said, law in books is totally different than law in action. Other day, I had a interaction with the young students. I raised an issue which I would like to repeat over here. We say law is blind. And whenever you go to any court, you find that that statue with tarazu is blindfolded. And the concept is to convey everyone is equal so far as law is concerned. Everyone has a right of equality as well as equal protection. But my assertion, which perhaps I cannot explain over here, I have taken a stand, rather, my assertion is, which I even at present, when I get a chance to speak in the court of law, I say justice is blind. Justice is without eye. And if you ask me a question, how you are saying it, it can amount even to the contempt of court. It will take me time to explain, but nevertheless, just to defend myself, I just gave a quote of the distinguished session judge who delivered the judgment in Jessica Lal's case, the quote of the additional distinguished session judge who delivered the judgment in the case of Priyadarshini Muthu murder case, where they just raised the finger in both the cases towards the accused with the remarks within court, I know you have committed this murder and rape, but I cannot convict you. Why I cannot convict you despite knowing that you have done it? Because I am short of evidence. I am short of evidence, and subsequently what happened, I need not to discuss over here. They were convicted, that is a different story. Well, here I want to tell you, I want to communicate to you that so far as the access to healthcare is concerned, you visit any hospital, you will find that how the poor people suffer despite many schemes are involved. You go to any essential service, you will find the poor people, weaker sections are suffering. You go to any educational institutions, you will find those who are marginalized. They are not in a position to get a quality education, and now it may be very difficult when the foreign universities are going to have their campuses in our country. And go to justice. And my considered opinion is, which I often say, I take the liberty to say even in the courts, that if you are in a position to engage a good lawyer, if you are in a position to engage a good lawyer, there is every chance of conviction, even if you have, there is every chance of acquittal, even if you have committed a crime. I repeat, if you are in a position to engage a good lawyer, there is every chance of acquittal, even if you have committed a crime. On the other hand, if you are not in a position to engage a good lawyer, there is every chance of conviction, even if you have not committed the crime within court. Well, I would like to support this version with what present Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud, said when he delivered a talk to the bar of Bombay High Court. He said, if a fair trial is given to those who are in our prisons as under trials, 75%, 65 to 75% will get acquittals. They will be released. And thereby meaning majority of our prisoners who have the status of under trials, there is every probability, there is every possibility that subsequently they will turn to be innocent people. Well, this has been watched by the former Chief Justice of India, Justice U.U. Lalit. He too was addressing to one of the university convocations with the same statement he said. And if I take you back a little, if you have read the judgments of Justice P.N. Bhagwati, a great judge of our Supreme Court, if you have read the judgments of Justice Krishna Iyer, again a great scholar, great jurist of our country, and a judge of the Supreme Court, if you have read the judgments of Senior Chandrachud, you will find that their opinion in a number of cases. You take Sunil Batra's case, you take Charlie Sobraj's case, you take Bachchan Singh's case, you take any case, you will find it was almost identical, where they too were apprehensive that justice is not within the reach of a common man. Same is the case with other sectors. Here I would like to draw your attention. I think I am exceeding my time, madam. Time 10 minute ka tha na. You see the role of the Supreme Court. You might have read the case of Golaknath's case versus State of Punjab. Then you might have also read the case, very important cases, Keshwanda Bharati versus State of Kerala. And then you might have also read Manika Gandhi's case, Hussain Ara Khatun's case, and many other cases, Ram Murthy versus State of Karnataka, 1997. Why I am saying these cases? these cases have cemented, and they have said no one can be deprived of the rights which are guaranteed under our Bible. But at the same time, as I said, ground reality is totally different, where our common masses do suffer, weaker sections do suffer, in addition to the justice sector, almost in every service sector. And the crimes against women, the crimes against children have shot up. If you have gone through the International Human Rights Commission's report, Madam can bear with me, which the International Human Commission submitted so far as the crime rate of the 20th century is concerned. Justice Venkatachalaya, while analyzing this report and while addressing one of the gatherings of the criminologists in India, at that point of time, he was a chairman. He was former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and at that point of time, he was chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Well, he said 20th century on the analysis of the International Human Rights Commission's report speaks in volumes about the various types of the crimes which are being committed, especially against women, and reached to the conclusion 20th century has been the bloodiest century in the entire human civilization. Within quote, 20th century has been the bloodiest century in the entire human civilization. Well, God knows. Nobody knows at this moment what can be said about the 21st century at the end of this century. Whether we will beat this 20th century report, perhaps, so far as my opinion as a student of law is concerned, we will definitely surpass the report which has been regarding the 20th century. Well, at present, I was just talking this morning to the madam. New forms of the crimes are coming up against the women, against the weaker sections. You have before you, after Punewala's case, we never had heard such types of the crimes. Now, crimes are being committed where the criminal or where the accused person is unmindful, is not worried what he has done. It was followed by Nikhil Yadav's case. Just recently in Bangalore, daughter killed her mother and brought a new suitcase from the market, kept her mother in the suitcase and went to the nearest police station and reported to the SHO in this suitcase. Her mother is there and she has killed her. In Muzaffarpur of UP, recently a brother killed his sister and then carried the head off. He cut off the head from her body, took the head of that very deceased sister and carried it in the open market towards the police station and kept it on the table of the SHO in the police station that he has killed his sister. So many cases wherein new pattern of crime is taking place. Well, I will not take much time. Now here the question arises, what is the reason? Where lies the fault? Why we are now heading towards this very criminal world? I would like to request you, a case is pending in the Kerala High Court with the Honorable Justice Iman Ramchandran. This case pertains to a college where a college student in one of the autonomous colleges, perhaps at Kottayam, he used to harass, tease the girls. Girls lodged a complaint with the principal of the college. Principal suspended that very student for about 18 months, for many semesters. The student approached to the Honorable High Court of Kerala. The case was heard by Justice Diwan. Well, he found there is a lapse on the part of the principal because the principal has not given an opportunity to the student of being heard. Referred the case back to the principal, asked him, directed the college to appoint a proper committee as provided under the statutes and then take a call. But apart that, he called a meeting with the senior lawyers and fellow brothers and wanted to know that why our youth at workplaces, in the universities, in the public places, in the streets, everywhere are indulging in the deviant behavior. Well, Diwan Ramchandran, Justice Diwan himself, read almost all the textbooks, all the religious books. It is Gita, Quran, Bible, and all other religious books he found, and he wanted to know why youth is driven towards this such a deviant path. Well, his observation very simple, which has touched my heart, and I have also written a paper on this regarding acid attack in Kashmir. The judgment came immediately within 2 years. I gave my reaction that appeared today in the newspaper. The crux of Justice Diwan is there is something wrong with the parents, with something wrong with the family, wherein we as parents have failed to give a proper training to our children, a proper moral education, proper value education to our children. Now NEP 2020 is going to take care of it. But NEP 2020 will not do anything unless we are in a position to give a proper training from the lap of one's mother. It is from here where the spark starts. I say this mobile today, we are connected with the world at large. When I was doing research, we had those postcards we used to write. AIR was a main weapon with us to study the cases. All India Reporter. And that was very, font was very small. Even at the age of 25 or 20, we had to use specs to go through those case laws. Today you are connected, you can get the judgment from any court of the world. What to talk of the Supreme Court, what to talk of any high court or any court. You can get any news from any corner of the world. But unfortunately, the abuse and the misuse of this technology has disconnected us with our own children. Husband and wife, when they retire to their bedroom, both of them are browsing on this mobile, just checking whether they have received any message, any email, and responding back. And the parents are not aware, their children are also busy with the same thing. They are not conscious of the fact in which direction their daughter, in which direction their son is going. You have the recent example of Oroshi Talwar's double murder case. You have many cases in metropolitan cities where parents come to know about what is going on with their daughter or with their son only when it is too late. And we have many people. Recently in one of the national law universities, there was a student. He had become a drug addict. The Honorable Vice Chancellor of the university, one of the leading national law universities in our country, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the university contacted the parents. Both the parents were IAS officers, posted in South at 2 different places. Mother said, I am busy, I will not be in a position to come to the university to attend the Vice Chancellor's office. Well, then the father was requested. He also expressed his inability and said that he is busy with some minister is coming to the district. He will not be in a position to leave the district. And believe me, the student who was doing law in one of the best universities in our country was driven to commit suicide. Even Bollywood, Hollywood, you will find often suicides are committed. In many posh areas, suicides are committed. In poor families, suicides are committed. Our youth is becoming a drug addict, but the basic problem, as Justice Diwan has said, I am also of the same opinion that we need to start, charity starts from home. We need to devote some time to our youngsters. You as an elder brother, you as an elder sister, you have to see what your youngsters are doing. And parents have no option except to give some time to their students. With this, I wish all the success to this seminar, which is on a very important topic. And I am sure with these seminars, at least an awareness will come up wherein we shall be educated about the concept of equality and the importance of the equality. And perhaps with this awareness, we may be in a position to start equality right from our home. Father may not be in a position to discriminate between his son and daughter. He may not prefer his son more over than that of his daughter. At least if this awareness comes, I'm sure success is on our side. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Your interpretation about the blindfolded lady of law and the discussion on landmark judgments in relation with the contemporary issue of right to equality, I'm sure greatly inspired the participants and students present here. I humbly request Dr. Usha Ramanathan ma'am to enlighten the audience with her words of wisdom.
Thank you. I too am extremely happy to be here, not because I think I have a lot to, that I can give you wisdom. Wisdom is a very serious thing to ask of any person, and I'm going to make no claims to wisdom. But I think the advantage of age is that you spent a large number of years thinking about many of the things that, you know, it keeps churning in your mind, in your head, and then over a period of time, it's not what you reach. It's not a conclusion that you get to, but the process of thinking and what that process of thinking is producing, which becomes significant for us. And it's very helpful when I can just put the burden on youngsters and say, okay, we've thought this far, now you please undo all the damage that we've done and carry on with some of the learning that we've done through the years. So this is really my opportunity to shift the burden from my life to yours. So welcome to it. Which is basically your teacher saying that, yeah, you've got to take this on. So, see, the question that we are confronted with really is, what are the contemporary challenges in relation to the right to equality? And for which we need to have some kind of an understanding of what we mean when we say equality and what we don't mean when we say equality. I think in your classes, your constitutional classes, you would have read about the right to equality in the Constitution. And before I say anything about that, I think it's also important to bring back what the Puttaswamy judgment very eloquently said. Rights are not given to us by the Constitution. Rights are inherent in every person. That which is there in the Constitution are rights that are recognized and put into the Constitution, but it doesn't limit the ambit of our rights. Human freedoms are extremely important for anything in human life. To live life like a human being, we need freedom. And in that context, so we need freedoms. And for us to enjoy our freedoms and for us to realize what potential freedom has, it is important for us to be equal with others who also have those freedoms. Equality is not sameness. Everybody can't be the same. We are not looking for robotization of human beings where we create one kind of a paradigm and make everyone uniform and everybody has to be that way to be equal. Uniform is not about equality. Sameness is not about equality. And I think when I look at the, look at what is going to be discussed over the next 2 days, I find that you're actually going to be looking at various ways in which people can achieve freedom. Say something like the equality of opportunity. I mean, can achieve equality, which is like the equality of opportunity. It's not about everybody being in the same place at the same time, but everybody having an equal possibility of being able to reach an opportunity and to use it if that's what they want to do. So this conference in that sense should be to open our minds and say, what are the different ways in which we can think about equality? The thing about equality, which is constitutional, is also in acknowledgement that it is not about everyone. Like Professor Mir was saying, it's not about justice being blind. It's not about the law being blind. We actually need to know the differences and diversities that exist in our society. In fact, one of the interesting discussions we've had over the years, in jurisprudence, you would have read about Rawls's theory of justice. And there is this veil of ignorance which you're expected to cast, because if you know who you are, and if you know your position in life, and you make a law knowing your position in life, then the fear, the anxiety is that you will make laws which will fit you the best, which will suit you the best. And therefore, you must cast a veil of ignorance. You could be the most disadvantaged person once the veil of ignorance is cast. So you will then make laws which will help the most disadvantaged, the person who has the least, the person at the bottom of the rung, bottom rung of the ladder. That's the expectation. But I think our condition and our idea of equality is a little more complex than that. We, in fact, need to know that what we are dealing with. When we say we have reservations in parliament for certain communities and certain classes of people, when we say scheduled castes and scheduled tribes will have special dispensation when it comes to having reservation in parliament, it is because we acknowledge that these are specially disadvantaged classes and they need to remember that they are there representing. It doesn't mean that they will only, it means that they will participate in everything, knowing a context of where they are coming from. It is also a way of training people who have advantages and privilege all their lives. It's to introduce them to what it means to be without that privilege. It is bringing parity in understanding. It is learning how to make people who live, in a sense, we'll find that many of us live in, now, I think in modern lingo, you say live in bubbles. But, we ghettoize our minds in various kinds of ways, and equality is a way of breaking that down. Thinking about equality is a way of breaking that down. Over the years, we've found that there are many times and many ways and many kinds of situations where we've had to deal with this question of equality. And I think if there is one bit of good that the emergency did, it is that it produced a large number of democratic movements after that. When we saw how repressive the emergency was, and I know you're all very young and the emergency will seem like something that existed perhaps in some fable or fiction. It was a very real happening. And for that 1.5 to 2 years when the emergency was in force, there were times when all freedoms seemed like they had got suspended and might vanish. It came back because the emergency was lifted and we had another election. And we came back to democracy. And at that time, we find that when people realized what they were losing, then the battle for retaining that became very strong. And so we find that many movements grew. I mean, they kind of actually took root. They came into existence, took root and grew post-emergency, many movements. So among those movements you'll find is the women's movement. And the women's movement, it's like it had started, there's a report called Towards Equality. It's quite an interesting story that though, because the in 1975, you were going to have the first international, it was going to be the first time that you will have the International Women's Day. And it was a year that was declared, it was a decade for, for women. So the first meeting, the international meeting was going to be held. It was a UN-sponsored meeting, which was going to be held on women. So the Indian government then asked, they put together a team of leading scholars and activists. I think all of them women, although there were professors who were men who contributed to it later, and told them, why don't you give us a report? The Indian government wanted a report to be produced so that it could be carried as the Indian delegation's contribution to the discussion that would happen in the international arena on women and women's rights. And the report was produced. That's the report which is called Towards Equality. In the Towards Equality, which was handed in towards the last days of 1974. 1975 was when you're going to have the conference. And the report was sought to be buried. And that's interesting because there are things in equality that can shake a polity in such a way that people who are entrenched in positions of privilege, authority, they would not want it to be shaken in this way. So the report set out, and it's also interesting to see, there were people like Professor Veena Majumdar, Professor Lotika Sarkar, Pool Renu Guha. Now, for some of them, they had not really seen what it was like to be a woman in different kinds of situations. When Madhuri ma'am was talking about going out and seeing and knowing that other people live differently and with different sets of problems, this was true too there. When they went out and they went to the villages and they had these meetings, they found that what they thought was a woman's life was only what they had been exposed to. But going around and looking, they found that actually the issues were far more complex and a far wider range of things needed to be dealt with if women were to be able to move towards equality. Now, that report would have meant really turning the world, in a sense, upside down if you were to adopt that report. Because women would suddenly have to be equal. And for women to be equal, there were many positions of privilege that had to be given up. Many recognitions of women as equal partners in any kind of civic polity would have to be acknowledged. And the vulnerabilities that women were subjected to would also have to be acknowledged. It's a huge ask. So there was, the report was sought just to be kept away, but the people who had written the report and others who had worked with them on it produced multiple copies. In fact, they got the government, one of the departments in government, to produce multiple copies, and then it was distributed. It's a report that all of you must read. Because what was the original thinking when it came to considering women as equal? What were the kinds of, there's a recent book that I was looking at yesterday, a woman who's a very, very well-written book, very engaging book on running. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm forgetting the details of all of it, but it's really, about 40, 50 pages of reading it, and I felt like I was running with the book. It's a really well-written book where the author talks about what it means for a woman to go for a run. When you go for a jog, what do you have to think about? Can you think about, like, men can go for a jog at 4 o'clock in the morning. Can a woman think of going when it's still dark? And how many things do you think about? About the clothes, about who's looking at you, whether someone is bumping into you or not. Can you say, excuse me, and then pass on, cross somebody and go? What will the implications be? All these contexts of fear and anxiety are ways in which people are held back. So when we think about equality, it's important to see what are the various things that we need to deal with so that people can achieve equality. I think we must be very clear that, there is a language that developed over the past 30, 40 years of empowerment. It's a hugely problematic term, at least as far as I'm concerned. Empowerment assumes that somebody will empower somebody else. Actually, I'm not sure that that's how it works. As a woman, I can tell you that nobody empowers me. I figure it out for myself. Just make sure that you don't create obstacles in my path. That's enough for me. You don't need to empower me. So there are, if we need to understand this, if we need to understand what are the various things that are preventing us from finding equality, then those need to be identified and those need to be taken care of. And at this point, I must say that the masculine answer to women's safety on the road has been CCTVs. And CCTVs are the best way to keep people under surveillance and all the time. So, sometimes the solution becomes the problem. So I would say that when you're thinking about all this, think a little carefully, think deeply, and don't take glib answers as solutions. A solution should never become another problem. So, just a caution, because we've all gone through all of these things before. It's also been an interesting period in the past, say, 2-3 decades, where one of the things that's happened is the multiplicity of identities that have emerged. We've always known that there are many histories written about how the idea of Hindu, Muslim, because you don't find it's not like the Hindu, Muslim, Christian. It's invariably been the Hindu, Muslim, which is a kind of colonial construct. So there is a lot that's been written on that, but also tribal communities. What is this identity of tribal communities? And I think, and then of course, as time has passed on, we have Dalit communities asserting themselves, saying that, you must recognize that we are Dalit and give us our space as Dalits too. Why should we, you don't deny that, you can't keep denying that we don't exist. So if you take something like the movement for the eradication of manual scavenging, we've forced into the consciousness of people that there is untouchability in this country. And it's a fascinating thing that in the Constitution, there are only 2 provisions where you see that Constitution itself recognizes offenses. One is in the rights against exploitation. The other is the question of untouchability. It says it's a constitutional offense. And yet we haven't been able to grapple with this and to say it has to end. It is not about adjusting into it and, giving people something additional, giving them protective kits. That's not the point. You've got to end untouchability, which means the practices that take you to untouchability have to end. Otherwise, you'll never find equality. And it is not all right, and I'll come back to this at the end, that it is not all right that some people are more equal than others. It's not all right. So, and we therefore have to be able to, to see and to recognize what is causing inequality and to find ways by which we, in a sense, put an end to that inequality. And in this whole context, in the past about 2 to 3 decades, we have the identities that have been emerging of LGBTQI+. I think it's a huge learning for all of us, for everybody, anyone I've met, it's been a huge learning, not to think in binaries. Man, woman, we can't think beyond that. Good, bad, we can't think beyond that. Legal, illegal, we can't think beyond that. We don't live in binaries. We don't exist in binaries. Our identities are not in binaries. Our thinking can't be shrunk to this where we are thinking in binaries. Things are not either equal or unequal. There are many, many things that we need to deal with. And I mean, I would actually say I'm grateful to the LGBTQI+ community for having taught me that life doesn't exist in binaries. And there is a way in which lawyers, particularly because you're either the respondent or the defendant, or you're a plaintiff or a, because we are 2 parties before a court, we reduce ourselves into binaries very quickly in the way in which we think. And I think if we really have to deal with context of equality, we need to be able to break out of this idea of binaries. And that's one of the learnings that we've had over the years. One interesting thing that's been happening recently is what you would have seen in Ladakh, where I often find that it's about the 6th schedule, and Ladakh is asking that Ladakh should be under the 6th schedule regime. There are many things that are interesting about this. But one of the constitutional, one of the things that we recognize in the Constitution is that the Constitution itself recognizes that everyone is not the same. It's not one flat terrain on which we live. It is undulating. It is varied. It is diverse. So it's a Constitution that has all the fundamental rights, but it also has Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. And For those of you who haven't looked at it carefully, go back and look at it carefully. These are very interesting parts. There are, I think, at least 10 states in the country which have scheduled areas. And scheduled areas take away from the idea of land and create the idea of territory within a territory. And there are ways in which we have to learn through the Constitution not to think about everyone being mainstreamed. In fact, in the climate context, this mainstreaming seems such an irony, because we talk about everybody has to enter the mainstream, tribals also have to enter the mainstream. And what has this mainstream produced? In the past 150 years, it has produced, the kind of development that we've done across the world. It has produced a climate crisis. You may have read recently, for about the past 15 years, there has been a discussion going on among geologists, among anthropologists and sociologists, and among others, about whether the epoch, the human epoch, whether that has changed. So we've been in the Holocene epoch. The era has been the Holocene era. The question that has come up in recent years is, have we gone past the Holocene era and have we entered the Anthropocene? Think about what the Anthropocene is, because it's very central to what equality is about. And that's something that Madhuri ma'am also mentioned. I mean, of course, you didn't say Anthropocene, but you mentioned all the contexts of it. So what is the Anthropocene? Anthropocene is where we have now changed the world in such a way that all of nature has to reorganize itself to fit the human being, and the human being makes decisions about how nature will be. So when we say we are cutting down forests, when we say the Amazon is not important, when we say all minerals should be taken out of the ground, we are making decisions. When we say polluting, toxicity being introduced into the soil, into air, we study this in our environmental law classes. But we need maybe to learn to apply what we are doing in these environmental law classes way beyond these, the idea of only environment, because the environment, ecology, and the human, because humans have abstracted themselves from nature and are looking at nature as there is a binary there too. There is me and there is nature. It's not, human beings have stopped thinking of themselves as part of nature, but as being people who will conquer nature, who will exploit what nature provides, who will control nature. So therefore, this discussion has gone on to say, have we really changed the epoch? Because it seems to be changing the world all around us. And it was very interesting during COVID to see how many of those creatures which had vanished from public view re-entered public view when the human being went into the room and locked themselves up. So we had all these sightings that happened. We said suddenly we can see the Himalayas from places where you couldn't see it before because the smog has vanished. You had leopards, you had hares, you had all manner of things emerge because it's human beings that are keeping them away. Now, this is not only something that affects the rest of nature, it also affects human beings because there is a lot of unfairness in who pays the costs and who takes the benefits. Part of the thing is, it is attributed to corporatization of all resources, where the corporate automatically means that you have to generate profit, and profitability may in many cases find itself in contradiction to what nature would require if it has to revive. And that produces inequalities of various kinds. So we need to be able to see, for instance, what climate change is doing to countries where when the water level rises, some countries are just going to vanish. Some parts of some countries are going to vanish. We are going to have increasingly, and that's anticipated, more and more environmental refugees. But then we have territorial boundaries, and anybody, we know across the world, the idea of the refugee is seen as some kind of a terrifying thing, though I have no clue why. So this kind of thinking, where we can't think of the environment without knowing that we can't think of equality without knowing that environment also has a part to play in that, and which has to train us on what we are doing to nature, what is therefore happening with multiple countries, multiple peoples, multiple resources, multiple species, and then find out what equality means in the context of that. Even in a limited context, I would say we need to see how much inequality is produced because we keep creating refugees. What does that mean? And can we keep that out of our consciousness? I was also thinking that, one of the ways in which we learn to think about how unequal we are as people, the idea of fraternity, which Dr. Ambedkar put into the Constitution and spoke so eloquently about, is something that we don't seem to have known how to operationalize. I can understand when there is, for instance, reservation, affirmative action for some communities. And some people feel that, oh, if that hadn't been there, I would have been meritorious and I would have got the seat. It shouldn't have been the other person, it should be me. I can understand why young people feel that. When you miss an opportunity, of course you feel frustrated, you feel that. But along with it has to come an understanding of why it has to happen. Why did it have to happen? Along with it also has to come the idea of what constitutes merit. If we've had people of merit, people of privilege who've occupied multiple positions, but we continue to have extreme inequality of access, of opportunity, of life itself. When you take life expectancy, I remember talking to Bezawada Wilson, who heads the group that works on the movement that works on the eradication of manual scavenging. And we were working on a little, a note together. And he said, you can, what in rehabilitation should you put into the law? And at one point I said, shouldn't you ask for pension? And he said, no, don't worry about it. Then we did some more work and I came back and I said, but, shouldn't we just put in pension? He said, you don't realize most people who do this work don't live long enough to be able to get a pension. They die much earlier. And we don't even acknowledge these things. We don't know them. It's not because we are bad people and we don't acknowledge it. We just haven't been confronted with these realities. And occasionally when we are, it's too uncomfortable and we walk away from it. If any serious discussion on equality will need to account for many of these things. But I was thinking as a law student, when I say law student, it doesn't mean when I was in law college. You continue to be a law student for a very long time. I think I was a really bad student in college, so it's not about that. But many years later, when I continued to study the law, one of the things that told me how important equality is was the Dred Scott case. I don't know if you've read the Dred Scott case. It's really worth reading. It's an American decision. It was from 1859, and Chief Justice Taney wrote the judgment on it. It's a long judgment, and it is a horrendous judgment. It's horrifying. In fact, it is said that it was perhaps one of the triggers for the Civil War in the US. Because it is a decision where legally he might be able to justify it. You can give an interpretation which legally he could try and sustain. But it is, the fundamental thing in that, and the rest of it you can read, but the fundamental thing in that being that the Black person, the slave would always be a Black person. The slave does not have the rights of a human being because the slave is the property of the slave owner. And therefore, the whole judgment talks about the slave as a non-person, doesn't recognize personhood at all in the slave. And it's only reading that, I think it was because it's a long judgment. So when you keep reading it and you keep coming across what this sort of thinking does, and you realize that he didn't do it dishonestly, he did it honestly, it scares you even more. So there is a way in which entrenched thinking will have to be discarded if we have to really go towards equality. Otherwise, we can't do it. And equality is not about fighting for me to be more equal than others. It is fighting for everybody to be equal. It is saying that we don't accept malnourishment. How can somebody have so much to eat and somebody else, you find stunting in this country, which is over 40%. How can so many children be stunted in a country where we say we have plenty? When the right to food case came up in the Supreme Court, one of the things that was said in the court and which the court accepted as was this, that we had large silos of food, but we were not willing to distribute it because that can only be according to a certain process. Rats were eating it, but you wouldn't give it to people. So even among people, which is why the Anthropocene, I have a slightly different version of it, because even in that there is, there's a way if I were to use a very strong term, I would say there is social eugenics, where you decide who should live and who does not need to live. And therefore you focus, you say there are too many people, and therefore it's okay, you can't cater to everybody. The idea of social eugenics, that they will live so long as I am willing to give them something and they can live, that is something that is very core. It is connected with the idea of poverty. And we cannot work in this country in the law unless we recognize that a large number of people cannot autonomously survive. They only survive when they are supported. And that would not be okay. Imagine if your support got taken away and there is nothing left. Students who take education loans, if you find that suddenly the thing is just taken away, you find that you can't proceed, right? You can't carry on with your education unless you have that support. So imagine this for whole masses of people. When you say 80 crore people in this country need basic food support, we are talking about large numbers of people who we need to be concerned about when we talk about equality. The other major case from outside, which was Brown versus Board of Education. I mean, perhaps you should have heard about it. Brown versus Board of Education, and this is very relevant for us because it, at least some part of it is directly relevant for us, where in Brown versus Board of Education, it was about, there were states where blacks would have schools and whites would have schools, and you can't have these two mixing. So they said, you can't do this. You have to give equal opportunity, equal access, equal all of this. Then they said, so those who did not want the change to happen came with a compromise. They said, they won't go to the same school. We'll give them separate schools, but it will be separate but equal. So separate but equal is the same thing. I'm giving you as good an education, and you study, but you just study in a separate school. So this matter went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, of course not. You cannot do this. You have to have, everyone's entitled to be in the same school. There is no question of separate but equal. Separate but equal is unconstitutional, and they struck it down. Now, what would a state do when it is confronted with a decision like this, when those who hold the reins of the state don't believe that there should be equality between these two communities? So initially, there was a lot of resistance, a lot of protest. Then when it seemed like there was no option, if you had to run the school, you could only run it because there was the, from Washington, you would otherwise have troops being brought in to make sure that this happened. So they said, rather than be together, we will shut down the school. For 2 years, the school was shut down, where the child was to be, where the black child was to be sent to the other school, which was the test case. But after 2 years, you have to restart the school. You can't keep it closed forever. And the way, when they restarted it, it required the army to be present there to make sure that nothing happened to that child or to other people of that community around there. Just think about that child walking across from a distance alone into the school, a black child walking into a school where there is visceral hate that the child can sense. But it was the heroism of that one child and of the parents of the child who sent the child to that school, and the support of a center which said, of a government from Washington, which said that our job is to make sure that this happens, that ultimately you find that change began to happen. That is a very significant thing for us. We've been, after our this Right to Education Act, they were saying that you need to have 25% of the seats reserved for persons from communities who can't otherwise afford it. Now there are dilutions that are attempted all the time. So I think one of the dilutions that's suggested is that if you have very good schools and you're not within that, within the reach of that school, then that school doesn't need to have. So if there are no, say, juggies around that in that area, how are there no juggies in an area? Because you demolish the juggie. then there are no children in that area who come from those, from the economically deprived sections. And you say, it's all right. In those cases, you don't need to have the 25% category. Now, that 25%, I think we need to remember, is not only for those who are getting that opportunity to come to that school to study. It is for every one of us who has the privilege of not knowing poverty. When we don't know poverty, we not only don't know poverty, we don't know persons who are poor or in various conditions of poverty. If we have to integrate, if we have to understand each other, if we have to live as a community and not divided by various kinds of things, including divided by poverty and wealth, then we need to take them seriously. And I think one of the programs that you have, the IDEA project that you have, I think is an excellent, I mean, I've seen brilliant students emerge through the IDEA process and had some very interesting discussions on jurisprudence, which changed my understanding of it because my experience was different from the experience of the child. And so you think about law differently. So if you're curious, if you're interested, if you do want change, and you should want change because there will always be need for change. Even when change has occurred, there will be need for further change. Then it is important that we learn to reach out to each other across community, across class, caste, religion, economic condition, all of that. And that's because it can't be done by theoretical understanding alone. Theoretical understanding is very important, but that alone will not suffice. And I'll just say one more thing, which is my current preoccupation, which is about technology. This is our latest entrant into how equality will be dealt with. On the one hand, there are ways in which it is said that everyone can be equal, because if everyone with a phone, even a simple phone, will now be able to transact monies, to be able to send things to different places. The government is able to put money into people's accounts without any difficulty. What we have not recognized is 2-3 things. One, we don't give enough recognition to the digital divide. I think and we need to understand what the digital divide is. It is really a huge problem. When I say digital divide, it's not enough to have a device in your hand. You need to understand what it is doing, what it means when you find something in that, in that project, you need in that artifact, and how you deal with it. If you have a problem, how do you deal with it? How do you use it? It's not only about telling people, you press this button, you will get this. That is not digital literacy. And this converts citizens into subjects. And that's something that I don't think we would ever want happening. And the other major game today is artificial intelligence. And like many people have said, it is neither artificial nor intelligence. So, but we are captured, we are captivated by the kind of things that it is supposedly producing. And what is it built on? It's built on all our data, stuff that we leave everywhere. Now, for the poor in this country, they have had no choice but to get onto many systems. And they are getting interlinked within multiple databases. They are being viewed through the lens of that database. And that's how they are being reconstructed. It's almost like, I'm sure most of you have read Harry Potter. And when you think of the port key, so you get into that, I think it's the port key, where you'll disappear here and you'll get reconstituted at the other end. It's like through these databases, who you are gets reconstituted, except in Harry Potter, you emerge as yourself. Here you emerge as whatever you emerge. So you are not seen for who you are and what you do and what you think of yourself and how you project yourself, but as something that is seen through technology, through the forces that technology allows to develop. And that's how you are viewed. Artificial intelligence is a new game, and it has all manner of implications. I think, I'm not saying you should discuss all this in your in the equality sessions, but I don't think you can forget the influence of technology when you're thinking about equality. Today, it's not possible for you to do that. One last word. There is an article that was written years ago by Mark Galanter called "Why the Haves Come Out Ahead." Why the haves come out ahead. when you enter a courtroom, why is it that people who are repeat players, people who can afford to keep going back to the court again and again and again, why is it that they seem always to come out ahead? Because they can go multiple times to a court. I mean, there have been, for instance, cases like the Niyamgiri case, where the Orissa Mining Corporation will keep going again and again to the court saying, you know, okay, give us relief now, allow us to just have a sterilite model, allow them to just mine the bauxite, you know, the sterilite to mine the bauxite. And you have a state doing that. And the state then becomes somebody who's appearing for a company rather than for the people there. And the story of Vedanta is very instructive about what it means to have the equal right as anybody else to make decisions for yourself. So when you have the time, please take a look at that decision. But I wish you all the best for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Indeed, equality before the law in a true democracy is a matter of right. It cannot be a matter of charity or of favor or of grace or of discretion. I now invite the student convener of the conference, Ms. Netra Singh Mar, to address the gathering.
Thank you, Arusha. Esteemed guests, panelists, participants, faculty members, ladies and gentlemen, in a world where the pursuit of equality remains an ongoing challenge, our gathering here today signifies a collective commitment to address, discuss, and advance the principles of equality, justice, and human dignity. As we embark on this journey, I would like to take this moment to highlight that together we will engage in dialogue, discourse, share insights, and forge partnerships to shape the discourse on equality and pave the way for the meaningful change. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our participants, faculty members, Team ICRE 2.0, and admin staff from the student section who have contributed to making this conference a magnanimous success. Aristotle said, and I quote, "The only stable state is the one in which all men are equal before the law." Leaving that thought in mind, I, Netra Singh Mar, student convener for the International Conference on Right to Equality Contemporary Challenges, declare this conference open. Thank you.
I, on behalf of Institute of Law, Nirma University, would like to extend heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guests present at the dais for sparing time from their busy schedules and for sharing their profound knowledge and expertise with us. I request Madhuri ma'am to kindly present mementos to the guest as a token of appreciation and gratitude. I would like to invite Dr. Vikas Upadhyay sir, our faculty coordinator for the conference, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good morning to everyone. At the end of this inaugural session, I, Vikas Upadhyay, deem it a privilege to extend this vote of thanks on behalf of Ilnu and ICRE team. Firstly, I'm extremely thankful to Professor Mehraj Uddin sir for taking out time and agreeing to be our guest for this inaugural session. Such wisdom and insights has added value to the aims and objectives of this conference. I'm deeply indebted to Dr. Usha Ramanathan ma'am for accepting our invitations to be part of this ceremony and addressing this gathering. I am truly grateful for her presence and full of gratitude about the address that ma'am gave in today's session. The address was full of experience, wisdom, and insights from which all of us can learn. I am thankful to Professor Dr. Madhuri Parikh for her constant support and motivation through the planning and execution of the event. Ma'am has been part of every stage of planning and has guided us towards the successful organizing this event. I am thankful to my co-coordinators, Mr. Abhas Srivastav and Ms. Siya Bhojwani, for shouldering the responsibility of this event with me. My colleagues have been instrumental in the successful of conduct of this event. I am also thankful to my faculty colleagues at Ilnu for their necessary supports and constant motivation during the events. I express my gratitude towards the university authorities, DG and VP for their overall support. I would like to express my gratitude towards the AR office and staff members of Ilnu for their support and coordinations. I am truly elated to thank to the student team of ICRE headed by Netra, Vansika, and Arusha for putting in the extraordinary efforts in planning, managing, executing the event. The kind of commitment that the entire organizing team has shown is commendable, and because of their untiring efforts, we managed to put on a meaningful show for all of our participants. I express my heartfelt thankful to all the participants who have traveled from different parts of the country to be part of this conference. Your trust in the event and in Iluni keeps motivated to be better each day. Without your participants, all this would have been meaningless. I thank all the students of PG and UG and as the audience for their patience and participation in this inaugural conference. Once again, my sincere thanks to all of those who have contributed to the event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request the team of ICRE to please come up on the stage for the team photograph. And I request the participants and students to kindly be seated.